So, recently released by VW is the concept of the ID GTI. Now, this is super exciting. They've actually done this really nice video, just like the sketching of the car, and I'm going to go through just explaining what we know about it and what it kind of means for Volkswagen kind of going forward. But it's super exciting. It's kind of the first time, that they're trying to get more of a hot hatch kind of concept into it. And from what I've read so far about the car, yeah, it does seem really exciting and something that should be debuting around 2026. So yeah, let's go through this one. So arguably sort of like the inventor of the hot hatch with the Golf GTI. Super cool that they finally actually sort of announced sort of an ID GTI concept. And what's great about it is a lot of electric cars that are out kind of today, it's all about top speed, it's all about four-wheel drive, crazy performance. Think about like Tesla, think about all the electric cars out there. But what I love about this, as you can see from the pictures here, yeah, it certainly has got the styling thing, whether or not the concept will be exacting to the model, but it's certainly going to have a very similar type of design. Looks like a hot hatch, which is great, small dimensions. You can almost see a little bit of ID3, but they've sort of like, yeah, scrubbed out a little bit. There's a lot of this that I like, but I'll talk a lot more about sort of like the design in a second. Yeah, I mean, very futuristic, and yeah, there you've got the golf ball almost style sort of in the console there. So before I go through all these kind of images that they've got plenty of, what do we know about this? So the person who actually designed sort of the concept of the look of this is actually the same one who drew up the Mark 7. I have a Mark 7 Golf R myself. It's a very good looking car. It works. It does a lot. This particular car has bespoke sort of like 20-inch wheels. They've said here even the golf ball sort of lives on. No manual gearbox, because that's the difference with electric. It's quite hard to sort of introduce that. I recently spent time with the Ioniq and the Ioniq N, and they sort of introduce sort of like fake gear changes, which is quite cool. But for this one, who knows what they'll do in the future. Obviously, they've got a few years before something like this would come out. So essentially, they've replaced it with a rotary dial for the centre console, which, at least they're trying to give a nod to that heritage. And it looks like a GTI, it looks like a modern day GTI. But that front wheel drive aspect is what's interesting. That's traditional for GTIs. And that's kind of what I said about the GTX that I drove sort of last week, because I know it was an ID4, but GTX, obviously, the idea with the X is generally probably the full motion sort of system that VW's got. And that does give a completely different perception of how a car drives. Arguably, hot hatches are front-wheel drive. And the thing is that they're using sort of features from what's on the GTI and the GTI Club Sport with the front-locking differential. So expect sort of anywhere between sort of 300 and 350 horsepower, maybe more towards the 350 end, if not a little bit more. Because of the batteries, this will weigh a little bit more than your traditional car. So, well, yeah, your traditional combustion engine car. Plenty of features to go on about. They don't confirm power from what I've seen here. They just confirm a lot more about the technology. They confirm how they link it to sort of like the Nürburgring. They've got that sort of, intent of making this a hot hatch. And yeah, again, I'm really interested to know what you guys think in the comments, because this is what the future is essentially going to be. And Volkswagen don't necessarily have to make this kind of car. So it's cool that they're actually sort of designing it and they're pushing it out there. They're saying it's based on the ID2 kind of concept, which was which was revealed back in March. I'm filming this in the start of September when this has been released. And rather than thinking of it as a Golf, I believe it's more looking to VW Polo size, which again is interesting because that would save a little bit of weight. But kind of, would it be big enough? I guess we'll just have to kind of see. So what VW have said is they basically can kind of say low weight, which suggests to me it's more towards the Polo size. It's got really good aerodynamics, which is, aerodynamic efficiency and drag is really important for a lot of things now. And a comfortable ride and a large battery, which is interesting because a GTI for me should be quite sporty, but also comfortable. But let's go through some of these concept images then. EVs tend to look quite big in general and quite chunky. This doesn't give off that kind of impression initially to me. It's got some really nice designs and, again, obviously concept sort of style. It definitely looks like a VW, definitely looks like a GTI. I sort of said at the start, it gives off the impression of a Golf. Kind of gives more of an impression of like the ID2, and which has some sort of like similar sort of looks to an ID3. I like the diffuser. I like the wheels. I mean, 20-inch wheels are pretty big, which again suggests the car is going to be of decent enough size for kind of people to use. You know, like one car to do everything. So that should be interesting. Gives me hope a little bit around an IDR potentially in the future. Well, which they did do, but they sort of used that for like the Pikes Peak kind of car. Very, very futuristic. You know, you can imagine sort of the red lighting is just the ambient lighting that goes inside. And actually, you can see just on the top there, you can see the lap timers and bits. So maybe that's some sort of projection they can do. You've seen heads-up display in the past. This looks like something very, very futuristic. If you can do a heads-up display for the whole screen, again, that's got to get through a lot of legislation to get that in. But that sounds like a really cool concept, and they do talk about that too. And yeah, to me, I mean, it almost kind of looks like a little bit like the VW Lupo as well to some points. Flush at the front as well. Again, all aerodynamic drags. And I just wonder how that they can use some of the things that can essentially be considered as negatives to electric in terms of the weight and in terms of, well, maybe obviously it takes up more space or sort of below sort of like the bottom end of the car. Maybe they could like improvise by putting something in more different areas. You know, electric has been around now and it's been a bit more mainstream over the last sort of, maybe I'd say sort of 5 years, 3 to 5 years. So there's so much that people have learned to be able to introduce, and with technology changing so quickly, particularly in the software sort of side of things, what can they actually do with the actual physicality of the car to kind of improve it? Will it be good to drive? Will it be fun to drive? The GTI Club Sport, which I've driven plenty of times, as well as the GTI, is great to drive. Steering wheel looks cool. It looks like, yeah, it looks futuristic. It also says that this should be affordable. That's one thing that's quite difficult with electric. You see the seat configuration there, it goes quite far back. There's a lot more possibilities of what you can do. It's weird because it looks like it's got quite a big centre console, but cars in general, electric cars shouldn't have a transmission tunnel because they don't have any gears, and you know you don't need that's well, and it's not rear wheel drive either. So essentially, it should be quite empty, free at the back, other than the battery. Range will be interesting. I'd like 300 miles out of my car. If they can do that, I'd be happy. What do you lot think in the comments of this car? What do you think of the fact that they're designing it? What do you think that they're introducing it? Do you think it will work? That's the big thing. Would you buy one? Would you generally be interested in buying one? Let's say if they were to introduce this car at around the £40,000 mark, bear in mind the base GTI today in 2023 is sort of around the £34,000 mark. That's a 2-litre petrol engine. It's going to be over 40 grand in my mind. If they can touch on that sort of price point, it kind of just makes it into sort of the realms of affordability if you factor into inflation in 2026. That's the big point. Is it going to be fun to drive? Looks cool. Glad they're introducing it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on the recently introduced ID GTI Concept.